61 subscribers.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
You were a loyal subscriber to King.
I am, and when I see this come through in my notifications, I can't wait to see the title.
You're gonna get all riled up when you see it.
How the nope. Feedback. How the age of consent debate demonstrates the central failure of liberalism. Okay, well, that's good. I wonder if age of consent would do it. We are at 861, so we might as well start to push it.
There you go. Now we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, is it when people are debating the age of consent, they're doing it for like Puerto Ricans as well? Because I mean, I was in the Northeast during elementary school, and it's not even a joke. The Puerto Ricans seem to hit puberty probably a year and a half to 2 years before anybody else. So
that's interesting. I wonder why.
It seems like it should be factored. Do you wonder? Happy cancellation day, he says. The first comment. That's what I'm saying. Man. Yeah. Between the Matt's woman beating analogies or whatever he was making last time, debating disliking this video. Yes. Yeah. You know what? For a change, I think we really have to change like the call of action that we have with the fans. Please dislike and share. Subscribe to the channel, dislike and share. If we
dislike and hate share.
Yes, hate share.
Okay.
It would be kind of
told everyone
pivot and we kind of like lose all the people who like very enthusiastically participated in the chat and the whole bit, and we just really turned into just agitating the hell out of people that we never wanted to attract in the first place.
It's inevitable that we're going to have a heel turn.
Yeah, it's got to happen.
And
then we can come back and after for a third act.
We'll rehabilitate ourselves.
Yeah. No, why are there likes? We want dislikes and hate shares. I think I'm kidding. I don't know. It'd be fun to play with it, see what happens. How does the algorithm handle dislikes?
I imagine that videos that
is the fifth turning. Yes.
That's actually really good. That's a good question. I wonder how the algorithm handles dislikes.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is that they probably would suppress they wouldn't share them as much, but they obviously it's not like a unidimensional or there's not one factor that determines it, because like there's lots of videos that you'll see sometimes that have like a huge like to dislike ratio. Tons of people disliked it, but it's also gotten millions and millions of views. So if something's got millions of views and it's getting lots of dislikes, then probably still
too badly in the algorithm.
Okay. It's funny. I told everyone that we were going to be live at 1:30, and here we are half an hour later. That's weird for those who have followed us since the early days, you know that if we tell you that we're going to go live at a certain time, guarantee it's going to be at least 15 minutes after that.
Yeah.
In this case, I was setting up a new this new interface here. I forgot to put Stevie Boy's cap. I wonder if I can do that now. If I can add your name. I think I can. What do you want your name to be?
For this one, Libertarian Steve, maybe. Because I had a conversation with Dave Smith this morning during my physical therapy.
How was that?
And just the charisma that drips from that man is just enchanting. So
it's very true.
I'm now a lifetime LP member. I didn't want to bury the lead, but yeah.
Well, I guess you just titled yourself that. So
yeah.
Okay. So I think I've got everything set up with the details on here, and then okay. Let's do this video here real quick. This is fantastic. This is you have got to love the LAPD.
Yes.
If you don't love the LAPD,
anyone watching The one thing that you'll say about anyone watching, love us or hate us, they probably love the LAPD. It's a common thread.
Okay, so this here today, apparently the LAPD. So this is a tweet from LAPD HQ. They say our bomb squad officers were in the process of seizing over 5,000 pounds of illegal fireworks in the area of 27th and San Pedro. Some of the fireworks were being stored in our bomb squad trailer as a precautionary measure. Unknown at this time what caused an explosion. So there was an explosion, and it looked like this.
Jesus Christ. That is such an explosion.
And it's just a normal like city street in a semi-residential area.
Right.
Absolutely insane. And so then the LAPD.
Holy shit.
So you notice the LAPD here says on their first tweet, unknown at this time what caused an explosion. Well, look at this. This is an interview with one of their detectives or something like that just before.
There was an anonymous call made regarding some fireworks at a residence here on 27th Street. Newton area officers responded. When they met with the individuals in the house, they were given permission to go to the backyard. When they went to the backyard, they saw a large quantity of fireworks. The bomb squad was requested. They're here now. They're taking those fireworks, over 5,000 pounds worth of fireworks, and they'll remove them to a storage location. There is also a small amount of unstable, improvised, explosive type fireworks. Those are too unstable to move. They'll be blown up here at scene. Those are too unstable to move. They'll be blown up here at scene. Fireworks, those are too unstable to move. They'll be blown up here at scene. There's
now it's like how what is the meme format? It's how it started, how it's going. So how it started, they'll be blown up here. How it's going, unknown at this time what caused an explosion. So what I said was that I said that there's first of all, the LAPD is redefining bomb squad. Here's the consequences of that explosion. If this picture will open, there you go. So this was their little compartment on the truck here, and it just blew everything out around these people's cars. Or look at that. Yeah. This car is like blown onto its side. So I said 100% chance the city of LA is going to try to stick the liability for this one on the dude they arrested for having the fireworks. Guarantee it. Because you notice that she said that that it was, these were like improvised explosive devices, so that they have to be, they're too unstable to be moved. So what that tells me is what they're going to do is they're going to say, because they were too unstable to move, we had to try to move them and they blew up in the process. Therefore, this guy's liable for them. Somehow the guy's going to get stuck with the bill for that.
Oh, so 1,000%.
Yes. Okay.
That was such an explosion. You know what I mean?
That's amazing.
Like if you just read an article about some fireworks blowing up in downtown LA, there's no way in your mind's eye it looks like that.
Right. You think, oh wow, there's like, kind of look like a trash can exploding or something like that.
Man, I wonder if it put a hole in the truck. You know what I mean? I wonder if anything poked through at all.
Right.
Not like, I wonder if it decimated an 18-wheeler and like the surrounding neighborhood.
I'm sure that an explosion that size, that close to those buildings, has to affect the integrity of their foundations and stuff. I feel like those houses would have to be deemed unsafe or unlivable until they've been thoroughly inspected now. So just think of the cost of all of this.
It's all going to get tagged on to that guy's bill.
Yeah. And that guy's going to be paying for it, and then
it will go into the taxpayers, but whatever.
Right. He's being, if I'd let the whole thing play through, not only is he being charged with the possession of illegal fireworks, he's also being charged with child endangerment. So, so then they're just going to add this to that. This is I don't know if you guys are aware of this, if you know about this. I don't remember when this was, and I don't remember all the context to it. But someone put this in the replies. This was Philadelphia. There was some sort of someone in the chat, I'm sure will know. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to search for this. So,
like
Philadelphia,
many years
residential
back,
bomb, the 1985 Philadelphia bombing, 1985 move bombing.
Yeah,
it actually here. I'll put this in the same tab so you guys can see as I. They
In
go.
the do we have any 17s in the audience? Well, that's a bad title to ask that question. All right, independent of the title, do we have any 17s or people who know about 17 stuff in the audience here? Are there any 17 theories about this LA firework thing? Do the math.
Do the math, folks. 1985 move bombing refers to the May 13, 1985 incident in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, when the Philadelphia Police Department bombed a residential home occupied by the militant black group Move. And the Philadelphia Fire Department let the subsequent fire burn out of control following a standoff and fight. 5 children and 6 adults were killed. 61 homes were burned to the ground over 2 city blocks. How many people do you think know that there was a frickin' bombing, that the cops bombed a house in the middle of the city? I bet you very, very few people are aware of that. Okay, so let's get this thing closed up here, and then we'll get on to the subject of today's show. Kill that. Okay, so first of all, welcome to the show, everyone who's here. We've got a pretty good group showed up already. If you haven't yet, go watch, after this show, go watch the panel discussion we had on post-libertarianism yesterday on Buck Johnson's channel, the Counterflow YouTube channel. We had a really, really good conversation. It was Buck and Tho Bishop and Andrew from Popular Liberty and myself and Pete Quinones. And we basically just generally discussed all things post-libertarian. We discussed the hullabaloo and the hoopla from my appearance with Cyprian on Liberty Lockdown, as well as the response to my appearance on Pete Quinones, and then just the kind of general discussion about the LPMC and everything that they're doing. So we had a really good yeah. It's funny. I figured the live stream on Counterflow would be the talk of Twitter last night. Nope, libertarians were more concerned about age of consent. I fucking hate libertarians. Yeah, we got upstaged by another subject, and we're going to get into that other subject here in a little bit. But make sure you go watch that video that we did over on Buck's channel. I think we're going to make that a regular occurrence, so semi-regular, and we'll have various different people on. And there's a few different people who've been talking about it. What's that?
Did Tho do it?
Yeah, Tho was there.
Tho was there? That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. It was Tho. Yeah, Tho, Buck, Pete, Andrew, and myself. Ooh. And then in the future we'll add other people to the roundtable as well. Or I assume that they will. Buck has been talking about wanting to do it, and Pete was talking about wanting to do something similar. And it's kind of like all of us are sort of on the same wavelength now. We're kind of all aligning on the same things at the same time. Yeah. And
that is, just to be clear, that's you're aligning towards the idea that Dave Smith is a pedophile who, right? Is that, no?
Age of consent, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was wondering what the title was. It had to do with anything.
Yeah, that was, we got to blend everything together here.
But pedophile is sort of the original terminology, not like, it's sort of a loaded term, but sort of if you break it down to some of the original translation. That's a it's a predator.
Lost me.
It's a predator joke.
Oh, predator joke. Yeah. I thought it was funny. Someone took might have been Andrew from Popular Liberty. He took a picture of the.
I just got the second you started talking about it.
The Predator?
I just got, because I never really watched any of those movies or anything like that. I just realized that I thought it was just some goofy picture, but I realized it was the Predator. That's very funny. Damn it. I wish I got that at the time.
Yeah, you remember Inner Circle Kyle?
Yes.
Austin said what y'all are telling me is that Inner Circle Kyle was right the whole time. He sure was right about some stuff. And that was kind of watching the way that was handled was the first thing that made me, there's a whole bunch of different things that all made me kind of go down this NRX whatever pathway, this post-libertarian mold bug, all of that. A lot of that came because of watching the way that Dave responded to Kyle. And I don't think that Dave was, I think Dave was fine. I don't think there was anything wrong with the way that Dave responded to it, but it made me more curious. It was weird to me the way that he just completely dismissed it and like wouldn't really engage with it that much. when he did, it was sort of like you could tell that he was mostly just engaging with it because he thought he could make a good point about it, which is fine. But that just made me kind of curious. I was like, why isn't he engaging with these ideas? And as soon as I started engaging with them and starting to put some of this stuff together, I realized it's like the more you learn, the more you learn, the more you realize that you need to learn more. And
you won't fool me again. That's the point.
Okay, so Kyle was the first one who got Dave to debate him by name calling him an anti-Semite. So before we get into everything else here, I just want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Paloma Verde CBD. Carlos and Vanessa, we love them. Carlos was there in the chat last night, he said we're too philosophical. We just need to lighten up and have fun. And then that's probably true. We get into too much philosophy, and we should probably just shitpost more.
Yeah.
But
No
Carlos, the host of the Los Libertinos podcast, he also owns Paloma Verde CBD at palomaverdecbd.com, and really good high quality stuff. I really enjoy it. Part of the reason we were late today is that I've got a pretty raging headache today. And so I took some CBD. I took some of the strawberry lemonade CBD gummies a little bit ago, just before I took a shower, and it's taken the edge off of it. So, my eyes can focus. I don't feel like I have to, pull toothpicks out of my eye sockets just to get my eyes to focus on something. So it's very good stuff, very good quality stuff, and they're very good quality people. We appreciate them a lot here at King Pilled, and we thank them for their support of this show. And we love it when you guys support them. The whole it's been picking up as our audience has grown. The orders that they've been getting from us have grown as well, and so I like that. Oh yeah, also the CBD is really helping with Eastwood because he's teething right now, and he's going through a rough stretch. He's been pretty much out of sorts all day today. And
if he wasn't, he is now helps. After those gummies. He's like, yeah, Dad.
we use the tincture with him. But yeah. So go to palomaverdecbd.com, use promo code KING. You get 25% off any order over $75. And the stuff is good. So you should definitely be ordering more than $75 worth of it. So thank you to Paloma Verde. Yeah. Thank you to them for their support of us, and you guys can go support them and support us in the process. Okay, so let's see. What order do we want to do this in today? Let's hold off.
Maximum order.
Actually, let us start with I think that this is going to be. I think we'll finish up with the mold bug stuff because I think that'll kind of tie everything off really well. So let's start off. Let's hit the age of consent thing first. So
of course, that way we don't have to get to anything else. once this gets ripped down immediately. Yeah, right. Perfect. So there's the age of consent thing. There's Thaddeus Russell from the Unregistered podcast and author of Renegade History of the United States and a general really good dude. He's a guy that I like a lot. He is. It's actually funny. I introduced him to Hotep Jesus after we'd had each of them on our show, and I reached out to him and said, "Hey, do you guys want to be introduced to each other?" And they both said, "Yeah." And so I connected them. They ended up having a really good conversation, and now they're like BFFs basically. So that was cool. That was really cool being able to see the two of them being able to play a role and introducing them to each other, and especially since they hit it off so well. So anyway, So Thad, I really like the guy a lot. I understand why he pisses people off. I understand why people don't like a lot of the things that he has to say. I also think that people don't actually engage with what he's saying all that often. And I think part of it's because he has a very unique perspective, and it's very nuanced, and a lot of stuff gets kind of lost in that nuance, and people just try to take him sort of like what happens with Trump. Like they'll take him too literally, and rather than just taking him seriously. So he's been tweeting the last couple days, I guess. I haven't followed the whole thing. I've just been tangentially aware of it. And he's been tweeting about age of consent and basically saying that the United States age of consent is way higher, not way higher. It's higher than
a lot of other countries in the world, a lot of other developed countries in the world. And that as a consequence of that, he says there's almost 1 million people on the sex offender registries, and that as a consequence of basically there's too many people on the registries as a consequence of the age of consent being too high. And so as part of that, he's appealed to people that he knows who participated in what would be considered a pedophilic relationship at when they like at an early age for them. So he's aware of the people who were quote unquote molested. And what he contends is that they don't regret a bit of it, and that they don't see it as having been a negative experience. And so from that, he's calling into question.
By the way, but yeah, continue.
1,000%. Yeah. What do you mean?
What? Oh, sorry. I forgot we're live in front of people. I'm just kidding. Yeah, no. Whatever the thing that doesn't get you in trouble for saying is what I agree. And it didn't happen in my life, so it's fine. I just imagine.
For those of you who haven't watched before, we have a goal of getting to well, not a goal. We're playing a game, which happens first. We get to 1,000 subscribers, or we get the channel taken down off of YouTube, and we are escalating that game today. That was a really interesting way of drinking that.
Yeah. I'm doing a thing today.
You've got skills.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's kind of the background. That's what the conversation that people are having. So Thad's mentions on Twitter are now full of like pictures of wood chippers, and he's just getting death threats and everything.
Oh,
and
it's debilitating. Sorry.
So I know a lot of people probably want to hear our take on the age of consent,
but you're not going to get it
specifically. But you're not going to get it because I don't really have one.
Right.
I don't.
And if I do
care
have one,
about
it's going to guarantee that this fucking thing is gone way before 1,000, before 862.
Please like, share, and subscribe, people.
Yeah.
What I see with this is two people arguing a position that isn't like they haven't gone deep enough. They aren't arguing the fundamental problem. They're arguing about which negative effect of the problem is better or worse. And NRX Twitter is not happy about Thad either, because I think that I would rather people err on the side of being too suspicious of pedophilia than the other way around. If I have to have an error, I want it to be the error that people are too aggressive in rooting out pedophilia. Now, obviously, I would prefer there not be an error. I'd rather every single situation be handled exactly appropriately, and not have errors in general. But again, we're not dealing in hypotheticals. We're dealing with the real world, and that's where I think both sides in this debate have they're both getting it wrong, essentially. And what this illustrates to me is a central failure of liberalism. Like I said on the title, the central failure of liberalism to me is its universalism, which is the term actually that Mitch's Moldbug uses for it. Universalism is his kind of catch-all word for. He's trying to avoid the loaded buzzwords like liberalism or progressivism or communism or any of those things. So he coined the term universalism because their motivation, their fundamental motivation and instinct is to universalize all of their values all the time, and universalize them by force. This is the key. This is the heart of liberalism, which was an ideology that developed really kind of out of in large part out of Descartes' I think therefore I am, where you're taking you get this like hypothetical individual that I've talked about before, that it isn't an actual individual. People abstract themselves away from the real world and imagine a hypothetical individual, and then they attempt to make everybody else conform to that hypothetical individual, and they see the state as, to one degree or another, a tool to be used toward that end. Libertarians' position is the state should be used in 0 situations toward that end. But they're still they still exist with respect to the state. They still have identified themselves as someone who identifies themselves with their opinion on the ideal role of the state. So there's two opposite ends of the spectrum here then with liberalism. There's communism and there's libertarianism. In both cases, they're both dedicated to the universalization of their belief system. So that's what leads you to, in a situation like this, arguing about what is the ideal age of consent universally. And there is no universal ideal age of consent. This should be completely evident. Just if you sit and think about it for 5 seconds. There's lots of people who are in their 20s who shouldn't be given, who aren't qualified to consent. And historically, it has been, if it was universally wrong for or universally non-adaptive, universally negative for here's where how do I frame this? If the opposite end of that spectrum was universally wrong in every single case, the human race wouldn't exist today. Marriage and childbearing, traditionally for the majority of human history, happened with young women in their teens. Okay, that's been the majority of human history. Yep. Now, I haven't known a single woman in her teens who would be qualified for that, who that would fit for.
Well, it's because of the hormones in the water.
Yeah, the chemicals are turning the frickin' frogs gay.
Yeah, okay. All right, it was a good one, but yeah, nope. Yeah, keep going. Ooh. That's so, I see the thing. This is a disclaimer for anything messed and whatever wacky thing that I said earlier that was just like, oh, what is he saying about his own lived experience? That's no. I prioritize humor above almost anything. It's a very dangerous world for someone like that. So
yes,
anything that I say that's all controversial in any way, I'm just kidding, and I think it's funny. I don't necessarily think it's true. So. But Dave Smith is definitely a Satanist or whatever. Joke. Okay. All right. Continue.
This podcast is like it's inevitable that we are never going to have a what would you call it? Just like a
audience. I believe is
ordinary. No, I was going to say just like an ordinary good faith conversation with Dave Smith is never going to happen.
Yeah.
I would love to have one, but he doesn't get our humor. Which is ironic, but yeah. Anyway, so
actually, want to know something that's kind of funny. I did talk with him like sort of last night and into this morning, but I was kind of just saying it's like this is sort of the concern, and I had to go work and stuff like that, and I had to drive, and then I was teaching, and and there was some like sort of dead space because he said, "What's your concern?" And then after the dead space, he writes me and he says, "Don't say it's that I'm a narcissistic predator. Please don't say it's that I'm a narcissistic predator." That's always pretty funny. Comedian. So anyway, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Continue about the 14-year-olds that need to be married or whatever you were advocating openly on the internet on YouTube.
Well, I thought there was a very interesting poll that Rothbertian put up on Twitter. She said it was a Michael Malice style poll where it's pick this one or this one. There was none of the above, and it was like, which would you rather have? Girls that are 15 to 17 getting married, or which would you rather be normalized? Girls 15 to 17 getting married, or women being like childless career whores, not career whores, but career whores. Into their mid 30s, and like which would make for a healthier society or something like that. And the girls getting married between 15 and 17 was winning by a fairly significant margin, I think. And the problem with this thing is that you can't have a nuanced discussion on these issues because people get really, really wound up. And I don't think that that's necessarily I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's probably because I think that a lot of that is born out of sincere goodwill and compassion and a desire to protect children. And I think that that's good and that should be encouraged. At the same time, if you can't create a distinction between someone like Thad, who very clearly isn't advocating for pedophilia, if you can't create a distinction between that and someone who's actually advocating for pedophilia, what you ultimately do is run cover for the actual pedophiles, because you get so wound up in these conversations that you're muddying the waters for identifying the actual predators. You're creating you're creating a worse situation for the very position you're advocating for. But that's zooming out further. Both cases here are trying to come up with a universal age where every single human being at this age becomes capable of consenting to sex. Prior to that, universally, they're not able to. After that, universally, they are. And that it's just plainly wrong. It's just it's never going to fit. But Thad is falling into the same trap because he's engaging with this on the wrong front. What he has stated is that his concern is the up to 1 million people on the sex offender registries that and a segment of them, basically he's contending, don't deserve to be on there. And I would imagine they probably don't either. And he's made a valuable point that libertarians are all about, the state should be involved in this and this, that, and the other. And then they completely lose their mind when someone talks about age of consent. If you don't have the conversation at all, then it's guaranteed that you're gonna have a bad outcome because you're not actually thoughtfully considering this issue. But the solution to this isn't come up with a universal solution to universally help all people who are unjustly on the sex offender registries. The solution to this is find somebody who's unjustly on the sex offender registry and get them off. And then to find another person who is and get them off. Or
and just keep going. Just don't ever stop.
Just keep going.
Get them all off. All of them. Oh,
but this is the same issue
detailed.
Applies on the other
side. We love all you. It's been real fun.
Watching that hit you was amazing. That was absolutely fantastic. That hit you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah. I've just been sitting here thinking of how, like, I went to engineering school, and like before engineering school, I was with a lot of people who probably were going to go to engineering school, All right, you got to read between the lines on this. And I'm just thinking of, you're talking about Thad engaging, libertarians in this discussion or whatever. I can think of, these people who, before there were Facebook articles about how, Bill Gates and Jeff, who's the Apple guy, Steve Jobs, like wear like the same clothes every day and because it's more efficient and da-da-da-da-da-da. The kids that like I went to school with and I was in classes with, they were way ahead of that. And they said the same thing, it's more efficient. They were really good at math. All right. I think you see where I'm going. Now, if you asked me, even as, just like a dumb fuck 16,
they did the math and that number got lower and lower.
And it's just, if even at like 16, 17, whatever, you were like, hey, you can go, talk to these people about whatever topic. I knew even then that it would probably be something related to math, or if I was interested in science fiction, which I have never been interested in science fiction, probably be like that. But like I wouldn't, for example, engage them in a nuanced discussion about, I don't know, say social cues or human emotion. Do you know what I mean? It would be a losing proposition from the get-go. So when you talk about that engage, it's just like there's a certain part of it where it's just like, you're doing it to yourself, kind of.
Yeah. That's very true. So on the flip side, this the same dynamic exists here. People who are very concerned about someone trying to lower the legal age of consent, they somehow they think that the age of consent is like a solution or something, that the age of consent just solves the problem. And it doesn't. It pretty plainly doesn't. And there's the solution to this, in essence, is nuclear families. You don't need to have what I was going to say at the top of the show, but I didn't. I didn't say it exactly in that way because of the way that it would come off. But my concern isn't every single young person and their experience, and them being protected from sexual experiences with adults. My concern, I can't possibly be concerned about every other young person. My concern is the young people that are within my sphere of influence, my child, my siblings, my cousins. Those are the people that my
15-year-old wife.
Those are my those are my responsibility. So if you're here having this debate about age of consent laws, like performatively, by your own behavior, you're not interested in an actual solution. You're interested in talking about a solution in a way that signals your virtue to people who feel the same way. Because an age of consent law isn't going to solve the problem. It just isn't. What's going to solve the problem is large extended families that promote each other's interests and look out for each other. And ultimately, arranged marriage. There has to be a revival of arranged marriage. Because if you have an arranged marriage, then it just solves. I'm just kidding.
I'm with it, man. I don't know. But we should go full at it.
There's, to a degree, there's a lot of things that were solved by arranged marriage, and it's funny because people think that arranged marriage was like the way that it gets portrayed in movies, where it's like, you're going to marry this man, this old creepy warty guy. I mean, I'm sure that happened, but it's kind of like saying letting people choose their own spouses is like letting people choose their own spouses is bad because look at all these divorces. It's like, okay, well, there's a point within there, but that also doesn't completely defeat the point. So there's clearly many issues that are at play here. There's many different dynamics, and you have to do as Jordan Peterson loves to say, you have to do a multivariate analysis.
Well, it requires a multivariate analysis of the situation. It's not straightforward.
It's getting bad. It's getting too high pitched. Speaking of impressions, it's
the straightforward was perfect.
It's too bad that you would know. You're also Canadian. It's too bad that there's not more people in the supporting listeners group, because that arranged marriage would have been a really good segue for a certain Indian Bollywood star character to make an appearance. And so there's this,
yes,
and that the family is like, no, you are going to absolutely marry Rajesh. He's famous, and it's like, no, but he's such a player. That nonsense. Yeah. So as more people join the supporting listener group, you will meet a lot of characters, Rajesh, including, I guess his he didn't have a name until right now. It's the first thing that came to mind. I'm not even sure if that's an actual name. Someone will have to, one of the more cultured listeners. Yeah, Rajesh, the inappropriate 90s Bollywood star. It's a hell of a character. Quite the ladies' man, and not shy to tell you about it, Rajesh. Yeah.
You guys are, by not being in the supporting listeners group, you guys are really missing out. You're really
missing out.
Yeah. Let's see. I wanted to see if I could put this. Yeah, I don't like that. I wish it didn't do that. Oh, well, it does do that, so I'll have to deal with it.
Are we doing a window kind of a thing?
No, I was trying to consolidate things on me. I've got a huge monitor that I'm looking at here, and so stuff is super far apart. So I was trying to consolidate it a little better, but yeah, it's not going to happen. Anyways, so that was my take on is that if you're concerned about young people being preyed upon sexually by adults, then start looking out for and protecting young people. You don't need to talk about the universal standard for looking out for them. Just look out for actual people. Focus on actual people. Solve the actual problem for someone. Don't try to come up with a problem, a solution that solves the problem for everyone in the abstract. And the same on the flip side. If your concern is people who are unjustly placed on sex offender registries, or your concern is that that sex offender registries are fundamentally flawed in some way and they need to be overhauled or whatever, then focus on that for individual people. Trying to come up with the universal policy for everything it will always fail. And this is baked into democracy. This is the whole premise of democracy, is that when you're trying to solve a problem, you have to come up with the one single ideal problem that solves all instances, or ideal solution that solves all instances of that problem. And ultimately, this is a form of laziness, kind of some form of intellectual laziness, that we don't want to actually have to deal with these things on a case-by-case basis. So we're just going to come up with some sort of solution and just there you go. Just enforce it. Someone write that on some paper, hang it up on the wall. Now that's the new law. It's born out of a flawed view of human nature and human society. And it's funny. There's the one of the quotes that you'll hear me quote on here all the time is G.K. Chesterton. He says, before you remove a fence, make sure you stop and think about why it was put there in the first place. And things like arranged marriage and large extended families hanging together, not moving all across the country from each other, but sticking together and building and growing together. Those were load-bearing institutions within society. They bore the weight of some of these problems that now, when you take those institutions out of the way, you've got to try to come up with some sort of universal problem that can be mandated from the top down. So it's funny because Thad, now to be fair with Thad with the nuclear family, he opposes the nuclear family, but I think in a good sense. The nuclear family subject is very interesting because people oppose it, but for diametrically opposed reasons. Some people oppose the nuclear family because they oppose like marriage. They oppose monogamy. They want complete like sexual profligacy. Everyone just fucking everyone. They want to. If you want to read a really interesting book, read Hans Hermann Hoppe's. What is the book? Is it on? I'll see if I can find it here. He talks about the way that communism and sexual degeneracy go hand in hand. They have to go hand in hand.
Yeah. It was when things moved away from a more socialist means of an arrangement that monogamy became more desirable, I believe.
Right. And monogamy was like evolved as a technology to manage a short history of man. That's the book by Hans Hermann Hoppe. A short history of man.
That's a hell of a listen. Yeah, and I think it's pretty quick too.
Yeah, I think it might be like 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, if you're looking for if you got like a 3 or 4 hour car ride, I totally forgot about that book. Yeah, that's great.
What he points out is that as you have people evolve from, first you have like the nomad kind of hunter-gatherer society, and then eventually as you develop agriculture, human societies start building up. They kind of settle down in a given area, and they're not moving around all the time. They go from nomadic to agricultural. And in earlier stages of evolution, before monogamy has evolved, people just kind of, like within the tribe, it's just kind of like everyone sleeps with everyone, and then they have babies, and then they take, like the whole tribe takes care of the babies. But eventually you need some form of some incentive for people to create fewer babies. So they need to be more constrained in their sexual behavior. So then you get all these babies, and it's like, okay, well, the whole tribe can't take care of these babies anymore. We need to have you guys, you made this baby, you're responsible for him. You take care of him. The rest of us aren't going to. The rest of us, and you kind of dole that out among everybody. And because of that, monogamy develops. So monogamy develops along with, as a technology, it develops along with the technology of private property. And for the same reasons, you have to start delegating resources to people, because once you reach a sufficient scale, you can't just hold all things in common. You have to start delegating them off as private property. And so marriage is the development of private property, and the sanctity of marriage like, because these two things develop in accordance with one another, then if you undermine one of them, you'll undermine the other. So if you undermine property rights, you'll undermine monogamy. If you undermine monogamy, you'll undermine property rights. So there's a reason that socialism, communism, radical leftism is communal in their economics, and they're communal in their sexual politics as well. The two will always go hand in hand. Once you make that connection, modern leftist politics makes a ton of sense. Their goal is to communize everything. And then libertarians, they want to say, oh, we're actually the exact opposite. We don't want to communize anything except for political power. Political power is so important. It's the most important thing, that it needs to be communized and distributed to everybody. Everybody needs an equal share of political power. And until we've reached that point, we haven't achieved the ideal person. Ultimately, libertarianism holds that political power is a human right, that every single person must have political power, and they must have equal political power. Ultimately, that's the implication of the application of libertarian policy as currently conceived. So it's only half the picture. That was actually a tweet here that I put out earlier. Something kind of clicked for me, because I've talked about this, about libertarianism and communism being like the full realization of liberalism. So you start with liberalism and you kind of, evolve your way down, and liberalism taking to its full right-wing conclusion is libertarianism, and liberalism taken to its full left-wing conclusion is communism. But both of them are the same thing, because both of them are liberalism taken to its ultimate conclusion. So I said, communists accurately diagnose the real world, and then they inaccurately describe the ideal world. So communists have a full understanding. Like, communists understand power dynamics. They understand how why the state develops and how it works and how to move it, how to affect it, how to change it. But when they describe the ideal world, it's completely, they've only got half the picture, and so it's very, very wrong. On the other hand, libertarians inaccurately diagnose the real world and accurately prescribe the ideal world. So they each have half the picture. But if you put them both together, what you get is the two wrong halves. The two right halves are lost. The chemical process where you mash the two things, and it has I don't remember the term, where it has like exhaust that comes off as a product of the chemical reaction. So together they provide both the wrong diagnosis and the wrong prescription. And they're two wings of the leftist bird. And so ultimately, these are the two wings, the two opposite extremes that are dictating the rest of society right now. So everything else exists between those two extremes. And what we're saying, the king-pilled notion, is that you need to get off this bird. You need to get onto a different bird, the bird that has the two opposite right sides, where you have the communist diagnosis of the world and the libertarian prescription for it. You put those two together, and then your path forward will become very, very clear.
Right. We're trying to create left libertarians. That's what we're here to do.
We're definitely going to do that.
Yeah. For sure. This has been
very interesting.
This is your Bollywood star right here. Just to give you a quick little glance of what you're missing out in the supporting listeners group. Wanted to share that.
I miss those days. I haven't heard from him in a long time.
Well, it only comes around when oddly enough, about when I cut a mustache, have a beard, and then cut a mustache into it, which is usually when he makes his appearances. But yes,
Amy's been talking about how she likes my mustache. How do I do this here? How she likes me with just a mustache. And so one of these days I may end up cutting off the beard.
Please do. But
that's going to be a very long time.
It's difficult.
I don't like my face without the beard.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and you feel amphibious, for a while. And it might not even go away if the beard really becomes part of you. But it is worth it to bother people with a mustache. Because, man, the amount of people who just really are it's just so off-putting to them it's just so fun, just to, even for a couple days of just making people uncomfortable with a
when
piece
you
of
have
paper
just
here.
one, when you have just a,
Just a
mustache, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
I wonder
good.
why that is. I wonder if that's like a residual Hitler thing or something.
Oh, I remember when I worked like in corporate America, I would, mustache week, kind of like Shark Week, but with facial hair. And I would obviously end with the chaplain, Matthew. I don't know why we had to invoke Hitler, but I had the little baby mustache, and someone came up and called it like a Hitler mustache or something, like, oh, it's the Hitler, and I said, oh, you mean the chaplain person who is at where I make money, like why are you saying the H word at a corporate America job, you lunatic?
That's a good way to get your job suspended before
right.
thousands.
That worked. I'm probably on some kind of
hours.
engineering no hire list at this point. So
okay,
here we go. Gear shift.
Tweet out this link.
Coming at you,
Okay, so
folks.
gear shift. We are going to
join the LP. We've been speaking with a few people, and we've been convinced in the marketplace of ideas that the move forward is to become lifetime libertarian members, LP members. And we sent in our box tops, and we're here to say that we retract everything that was said for the past 6 months. No, what was your thing?
No.
Okay.
No, not that at all.
Okay, what was your thing going to be?
But I think that our differences are irreconcilable.
Okay.
And anyways,
Got
I don't know where I was going to go with
Okay.
that.
Think of us as two 14-year-old children that just couldn't make it work after a couple of years of being married.
We're gonna go listen to a bunch of emo music and like,
dude,
right?
14-and-a-half-year-old emo divorcee is such a good character that someone needs to workshop right now. Oh God.
You're not going to be able to host those videos on YouTube.
14-and-a-half-year-old divorced dad emo kid.
I hurt myself to feel alive.
Trevor.
What I was going to say is it was funny the other day when the couple of days there where I was, well, it may still be happening. I haven't checked my YouTube notifications in 2 or 3, or my Twitter notifications in 2 or 3 days. And I have over 500 notifications there now. So people may still be blowing up my mentions. I don't know. But for a couple of days there, people were blowing up my mentions. And it was all ANCAPs who were super angry that, in essence, they were super angry that I wasn't saying that taxation is theft, that I didn't believe it and state it. And honestly, I was just waiting for one of them to bring me a, what do you call those things where people put together a statement and they pass it around and have everybody sign it?
A petition?
A petition. Yeah. They wanted me, or not a petition, but like, when you sign something and it says like, I endorse or I disavow this idea.
Or I don't know what that's called.
I can't remember, but
gay?
I do remember that.
Is it gay?
That yes, very.
Okay.
Very.
All right.
It was just that the irony there was just crippling.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm being inundated by people who are in effect demanding that I disavow any notion that taxation is not theft. And I just realized that I was my position in that relationship with respect to ANCAPs was exactly the same one, a pledge of condemnation. Basically, it was basically like I was being asked to make an anti-taxation.
Hey, I have a question about this real quick. Was this at all? Because like sometimes, like I have this new thing where I don't engage with stuff that's too like debilitating. But was this at all tied in with like someone talking about like Yemen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I'm gonna start twitching and like get like half my body's gonna get goosebumps if I think about this too hard. You guys got like you guys got to stop with like the Yemen, invoking the Yemen thing. If you're talking about like unless like move, you got to move. You know, if you're gonna fall on that one all the time, if you're gonna pretend that like that's the most important thing to you in the world, is, you know. And I get it. Like I understand like how terrible it is. I think more people should talk about it and da 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 da. But like, look, man, you're living in this country, and you're obviously living in this country because you find some benefit to live here. You know what I mean? There's no way that like that the United States is like this evil empire that is responsible for this, that, and I don't disagree with. I'm certain I agree with most of these ANCAPs and stuff like that. And it's like, yet you are here. And like, I just want them to acknowledge that they are here and they benefit from it. You know what I mean? And that the benefits that they receive from it are like outweigh whatever moral satisfaction they could get from moving to a place that is less responsible for funding genocide in Yemen. And and that might be me being kind of like a little bit of like a autistic twat, maybe a little bit, but there's just something about it that comes off as like real disingenuous when you're going to start.
If you're going to yell to me about Yemeni kids,
yeah,
and that me saying stop being poor means that I don't care about Yemeni kids,
right?
My one qualification for you, if you're going to do that to me, is have been to Yemen. Okay. If you haven't been to Yemen, don't even talk to me about it. Because it's just performative. You don't actually care about those kids. You care about being someone who appears to care about those kids. And that was one of the biggest things I was trying to say. I was saying with that point. So people have asked me if I like regret the way that I phrased it, and not one bit. I am so happy that I phrased it exactly as I did. Because of the reaction that it sparked. It created like the perfect Rorschach painting that the way that you responded to that told me whether or not you were someone worth my time, worth being around, worth having around me. I love the libertarian Tony Robbins thing. That is fantastic.
That's pretty funny.
It's not the first time that I've heard someone called the libertarian Tony Robbins either. A couple of years ago, someone was getting called the libertarian Tony Robbins all the time.
Huh.
And that would be Jason Stapleton.
Yeah,
has been called a libertarian by the exact same people. This is the exact same general crowd. Maybe not the exact human beings, but the exact same crowd. Mm-hmm. What ended up happening was my realization was that my relationship to these ANCAPs was exactly the same as my relationship to a bunch of libs talking about, like, if I would say that the minimum wage is racist or something. I would get the exact same reaction, exact same caliber of emotional meltdown. So these, like, a lot of people have said already that this was a very enlightening last couple of days, seeing the way that all of these supposedly, based, red-pilled ANCAPs turned into a bunch of shrieking harpies as soon as someone dared question one of their sacred or multiple ones of their sacred cows. And hopefully it was enlightening for all of you who are watching as well. Hopefully that stood out to you as an indicator of where people actually are and where people say that they are, where their rhetoric lies, and then where they actually have skin in the game and where they actually are living out the things that they claim. It's not that I said this multiple times recently, but I'll say it again. Belief and action are the same thing. There's thinking, and then when your thoughts motivate your actions, that's belief. Action implies belief because when you act, you act because you believe that acting is better than not acting, and then specifically that acting in this way is better than acting in any other way. So you're expressing belief when you act. If you're just thinking, though, if it hasn't changed the way you behave, if you learned about taxation and the only thing that changed is now you publicly tell people taxation is theft, and you give money to politicians who talk about taxation being theft, and you demand that other people say that taxation is theft, you don't believe taxation is theft. You think it. If you believed it, it would change your behavior. And I love the people that I got in my mentions that said, "Well, don't you know that rich people pay way more in taxes, and if you make more money, then you're just going to have more taxes?" It's like, okay, well, I can tell that you don't actually understand rich people. You don't understand what it means to get rich. To you, it's just bank account go up or bank account go down. You don't have a greater conception for what wealth is. Anyways, I don't think we necessarily need to beat that horse to death anymore. And there was a couple other things we wanted to talk about. So, do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, I think it's annoying. I think performative is a really good word, and I just think sometimes you can just kind of tell when things are just for the purpose of like dramatics, versus like someone, it does like I don't know, it just like does a disservice to like whatever cause you're invoking. When you use that, it just I don't know, it just makes me kind of queasy when I read stuff like that. It's douchey to begin with, but then it's just kind of gross. I don't know, man. I'd really love to. I really want to make a lot of these people acknowledge the actual privilege that they experience, by living in this evil empire, that they decry all the time, because I live here, I was born here, and I appreciate that, life is probably better here than many places, and it's a very wealthy country, and a lot of that wealth comes from terrible shit, and just okay.
One other thing.
This
whole idea that taxation pays for Yemeni kids getting bombed.
Yeah, it pays for roads. Stupid. I mean, if you, who would build the roads if we didn't have taxes? That should be a clip. We should just do a heel turn tomorrow. We should just make a show that does that. Okay. It
just demonstrates even further the lack of comprehension of the functioning of the state. But your taxes don't pay for bombing Yemeni kids. And stopping paying taxes isn't going to get Yemeni kids not bombed. They'll just print the money.
Right. They're all yeah. Okay. Go.
Pearls before swine. So another tweet here, another tweet thread that I wanted to run through here.
And if you'll notice the government always gets theirs one way or the other. So you can agore yourself. You know what I mean? It's kind of things well, I don't pay taxes because I don't want to bomb Yemeni kids. Do you not pay taxes because you don't want to bomb Yemeni kids, or it's just kind of convenient to have more money and not pay? You know what I mean? It's just let's be fucking honest.
Right. That was my premise with this, is that a lot of people that I tweeted where I said this. I said that people don't say, "Oh, getting taxed is wrong. That's immoral." People grow up not having an opinion of the world on taxation. Then they get their first paycheck and it says taxes, and they're like, "What the fuck? I hate taxes. This is bullshit. This is my money." And then they hear someone that says, taxation is actually theft. It's extortion. And they're like, "Hell yeah, it is. Someone stole from me. Come here, asshole. You stole from me. Everyone else, look, this guy stole from me."
One thing I remember, every once in a while, this guy, I don't remember, what was his name? Jay. Yeah, Jay. He used to call into me. He was talking about starting a podcast some years ago, and he would pay me a fee to consult with him. And one thing I told him was, I was like, "Jay, you want to remember this. People react emotionally and justify logically." And I haven't listened to his show in a while, but he used to reference that every once in a while. Jay, I hope he's doing well. I hope that our consultations from years ago paid off.
I think that he's really doing well.
Okay,
I think you really turned his life around.
He's doing great.
He owes a lot to you.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Okay, so let's let me share the screen again. We're gonna go for Chrome tab, and we're gonna go to this one, and we don't need audio and share. Okay, so this tweet that is fantastic, and it's great because it's from this Patrasoli person who has 63 followers. I think it's great. when
Allora,
yeah,
ma 60
it's
minuti.
your countrymen.
Ah.
I think it's great when you see when you find an account like this with very minimal number of followers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, there we go. All right. So he quote tweeted, and I want to be very clear at first here that I'm not, I don't think he meant for this to be a dunk on Jack Murphy. And I don't want this, I'm not intending to dunk on Jack Murphy as well. I think Jack Murphy is a fantastic person. I really like him a lot. I think that his liminal order that he's doing is what the people who want to change things through the LPMC, the liminal order is the thing that you need to get involved in something like the liminal order.
I have a quick question, because I was doing this thought exercise with myself. You know, it was kind of like talking about where the LPMC or this getting involved in the LP, whatever, is like an energy suck kind of, because I don't really know how much energy people are putting into it, you know, like actual energy. I know that people talk about doing lots of work and stuff like that, but in my experience with people who work, not a lot of them are constantly talking about how hard I don't know. But anyway, just the amount of energy and like money and stuff like that. I was trying to think of projects where that energy would be better suited. And I had like some harebrained ideas that I didn't know how realistic they were, that I would consider like to be like a better use. But what is he doing? What is this project he's doing?
The liminal order is here. I'll pull it up. Liminal order.
I mean, I of course know what it is. That was just a lead-in for the fans who may not know what it is.
Right, of course. I'll share this again. So this is his website. And it's an exclusive men's organization whose mission is to change our culture by changing ourselves. We ascribe to positive masculinity and believe in the power of individual accountability. The men of the liminal order know we must improve ourselves such that we may be of better service to our families, communities, and our nation. Through education, training, fraternity, and service, the liminal order equips the mind, body, and spirit to thrive in today's chaotic culture. We help men help mankind. So this is the
like a gay thing.
Yeah,
I'm doing this new.
Yes,
I did earlier too. I'm experimenting with like saying the word gay publicly, because a certain interview that I listened, like, so I called something gay earlier, and I didn't really mean that. That wasn't Steve Messina talking. That was sort of an experiment that I'm doing. It wasn't even me saying, I was doing a character, but it just as it was now. But yeah, I heard an interview recently that we might address where the person being interviewed used that word in another one I ever heard in a hot minute, and I'm just trying to play with it just to see what it's like, just to use the word gay, and yeah, it's interesting.
Kind of like people used to call things gay a lot, and then very obvious reasons they kind of stopped and don't do it as much. But so now it's kind of got like a retro feel that we're gonna bring it back. We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it cool again.
Now it's making fun of how people used to do it. That's what I'm personally doing. That if Steve Messina ever calls something gay, it's to sort of highlight how sort of archaic that is. It's very meta. You wouldn't get it. I'm a very progressive, high IQ person. Let's so go back to your thing.
There was a similar to that. I saw a thing I shared on Facebook yesterday, I think. It was comparing the word small and the word smol, S-M-O-L.
Yeah.
And the person who made the post was making the case that it's now a different word. Like smol is its own word, standalone, equal to small. That it has its own unique connotation, which is like small is like cute and small together in a certain way. So something that's small, a mosquito isn't small. And a protein isn't small,
right?
So it's interesting how words
a baby doggo is small.
Yes, exactly. So it's interesting how things evolve like that.
Yeah,
and that's another. This is another thing that gets at this central failure of liberalism, that it treats everything as static. And tries to like, okay, we're going to come up with this solution. We're going to stamp this solution into reality, and it's going to stay that way. But human beings and knowledge and everything is constantly evolving. It's constantly adapting, and life and culture are emergent.
With that said, and we'll go back to Jack, whatever his name is, his organization, what's it called? NAMBLA. We'll go back to that in a second. But July 1st, 2021, as a question that I asked for the fans, when is the word libertarian in any variant, when is that word going to be over? will it ever be over? If you agree that it has a shelf life,
I would argue that it's basically over at this point.
Okay, all right. Well, way to skew the input from the fans. Edit that out when that goes up on the podcatcher. But yeah, I would be interested to know what the input is from the supporting listeners group, or at least the live chat.
Well, you already have the input from the supporting listeners group.
Okay, so now we'll move on. Quick. Now we'll move on to the live chat. Okay, let's get back to NAMBLA.
I'm sorry, Jack.
No, what was it called? It was the national.
It was called the liminal order.
Nolo. Okay, I sorry. I was thinking NAMBLA.
Liminal order. So
okay.
Liminal means relating to a transitional or initial stage of a process.
Obviously, everyone knows what liminal means.
Or it's in anthropology, liminality is the quality of ambiguity or disorientation that occurs in the middle stage of a rite of passage when participants no longer hold their pre-ritual status, but have not yet begun the transition to the status they will hold when the rite is complete. That's interesting.
I think everyone.
Someone said it sounds like a cult, and it does sound like a cult, and I don't think that cults are bad things.
Right.
Okay. So this tweet thread here, we'll run through it quick. So this is a long way of saying that we're not holding this point against Jack Murphy. I think that this guy just used this as a jumping off point. So Jack's first tweet here is he had his own thing, his own tweet. He said it's okay to be white, and then he said if you think whiteness is bad, you hate America, plain and simple. There we go. That works toward our 1,000 subscriber goal. Now the nuance. Remember, CRT, or critical race theory, is meant to overthrow the regime. So they listed everything about the regime and called it bad, and then called it white. Truth is, many more cultures value promptness and objectivity too, not just whites. Keep that in mind. That's a reference, obviously, to one of the things about critical race theory, which says that things like promptness and objectivity are inherently a product of whiteness. So this guy here
is he saying that they're not inherently white?
Correct.
Okay. Promptness.
Promptness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he's got to listen. He's got to take some fucking Caribbean dance classes. He'll see fucking how inherently white or not it is. Don't make me go to. I mean, you really you double down on poor Dave, but I'm gonna have to go after this Jack Murphy character. Yeah.
You need to introduce him to CP time.
I mean, I just let's not go too far, Jack. You know what I mean? Let's not fucking let's not overshoot it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so this guy says that Jack Murphy is great, but this tweet betrays the always one step behind handicap of the Claremont set. Claremont being the Claremont Institute, of which Jack Murphy was just recently added, which is actually interesting because Jack Murphy is not his real name. Mm-hmm. His real name is John Goodman. But he became a fellow of the Claremont Institute under the name Jack Murphy. So people have talked about how pseudonyms are going to become the way of doing things in the future, and that's just an interesting example of that. But so I want to read through this thread real quick and because this guy makes a really good point. He said, CRT isn't meant to overthrow the regime. It is the regime. What he means by the regime was effectively overthrown decades ago. Every development in the American civic religion and constitution, the actual effective one, that's occurred in the last 90 years at least, led logically to this point. CRT doesn't list everything about the regime and call it bad, then call it white, so much as it calls the regime's domestic political adversaries by their most salient demographic characteristic, white, and then calls that bad. So there's an order of operations issue here, and this guy is saying that Jack has the order of operations inverted, and because of that, he's not accurately diagnosing the problem. He said this set, so the set, which is the domestic political adversaries of the regime, this set and USA conservatism generally can't make up its mind about whether it's defending a just Republican regime beset by external threats, or opposing a tyrannous, usurped one that has been fully colonized by the enemy within. But it's the same regime. Reasonable minds can disagree as to when the old regime was hijacked, or whether it was fated to end up this way. The fact is, however, the hijackers have taken the cockpit. They took it decades ago, and you have neither a plan nor the personnel to retake it. In this, the interview that we're going to discuss right after this subject, the subject of that interview, the person being interviewed, is he makes the point that communism, which historically, traditionally, was first really realized or borne out in the Soviet Union, was imported to the Soviet Union from the West. It was a product of American universities. It was a product of academia, and they used the Soviet Union as their playing ground, as their testing ground. You had the elites who were born out of their lawyers and doctors and prominent business people, and that whole circle. If you want to understand that circle and how it developed, read the book The Brothers, about the Dulles brothers, written by Stephen Kinzer. That's one of the most important books. If I was to tell someone, if I wanted to introduce someone to the way that I view the world, the books that I would have them read would be The Machiavellians by James Burnham, Dominion by Tom Holland, and The Brothers by Stephen Kinzer. Those three books should help you they'll give you as much as you need to really understand the nature of what is happening in the world today. So Sullivan and Cromwell was a law office in New York that both the Dulles brothers were very influential within for a long time. And basically they developed the national security state that exists today. There's tons of overlap between the people who developed the New Deal and American global imperialism and the people who developed communism as a philosophy. So what happened was communism basically just left, as the subject of the interview pointed out. Communism just left. They just abandoned the Soviet Union in 1946, and they left the Soviet Union to fend for itself. And the brainchildren, or not the brainchildren, but the brain trust that had created communism in the first place, migrated to the United States in the form of the neocons. And they took over the American foreign policy establishment, blended their Trotskyism with the Christian evangelicalism that had created the infrastructure for the national security apparatus, and started conquering the world. So when the Soviet Union collapsed, it wasn't because communism was defeated. It's because communism didn't need it anymore, because communism had sufficiently conquered the rest of the world through the American global national security state. So to get back to the thread here, he said reasonable minds can disagree as to when the old regime was hijacked or whether it was fated to end up this way. That would be my case for that, as to when it was hijacked. The fact is, however, the hijackers have taken the cockpit, and they took it decades ago, and you have neither a plan nor the personnel to retake it. This gets into the next subject. We'll get to that in a minute. Continuing the thread. The old regime, the nominal constitution, is just words on a page at this point, especially how you'd read it. State and constitution are as body and soul, and this soul's body died. The living regime we now must contend is something quite different and incurably insane. Right intellectuals need not just to acknowledge this, as they often fitfully do, but to internalize it, which they do seldom. They want to believe there's still a sound, usable regime lying beneath whatever latest layer of shit the left has besmeared it with. Ironically, of course, this means tacitly conceding that the last several layers of shit were no big deal and are, in fact, a now integral part of the structure. This is the conservatism is progressivism driving the speed limit. He's illustrating that. He says in parentheses, one thing the anti-CRT crusade makes painfully obvious is that most conservatives have no problem with the obsessive anti-racist and equalitarian themes of 90s to 2000s era public education. Texas's anti-CRT bill mandates Chicano studies, for fuck's sake. It also mandates that all Texas...
Remember our sponsor. Just a reminder for our sponsor. I'm sorry. 25% off or something, I think.
PlumaVerdeCBD.com.
Promo code King.
Use promo code King. Get 25% off any order over $75. It also mandates that all Texas students study the writings of Sally Hemings, whom it calls a founding mother of the U.S. The spirit of the bill can be described as, we must arm the moderate racial narcissists. Which
That's
I think,
pretty good.
yeah, which I think that the interview we're about to discuss actually addressed that exact subject.
Yeah.
She says, this specific issue manifests the broader general downside of failing to grok that the regime is the problem. You'll never think big enough. You'll never be more to your enemies than at best a middling irritant. And at worst, you'll unwittingly help consolidate their position. Unwittingly helping to consolidate their position, their position is part of the role of the LPMC. That's part of our criticism of it. That's what they're doing. They're helping the enemy consolidate their position by pursuing the wrong problem. So he said, in some
like plain words, real quick. I know I just don't know. You know, sometimes like sort of just real cut. This is Uncle Stevie Boy talking to you. So I know sometimes we get wrapped up in talking about fourth turnings and aliens and all kinds of political philosophy and whatnot. All I think that we're saying is, or at least that I'm saying, is that, you know, you have a bunch of like 20-year-old-ish men who, I know that we shouldn't make stereotypes, but they're white, all of them. There's not even one black guy, not even one. I'm kidding. They're mostly white, right? And they're all running up. Did we get kicked off of the internet? What happened?
No, I just closed the screen.
Oh, okay. All right.
We're good.
They're all right. They're all white. Every last goddamn one of them is white. Okay, no, I'm kidding. Anyway, you got a bunch of young white men rallying to something that's being this, and this is all like the length. This is all actually what's happening. Rallying towards something that's being called a takeover, right? And so a lot of these people like to post pictures of guns online, like to make a lot of anti-government posts, and that's fine. And this is the thing. It's not about that there's not anything wrong with whiteness. There's not anything wrong with guns. There's not anything wrong with, you know, that's not the point. So if you're just like, I don't care that people think that I'm white and don't like white supremacy, that's ridiculous. That's not what we're talking about. It's that is in fact a bunch of white men rallying towards something called a takeover, when the whole political climate is moving more and more towards this narrative of domestic terrorism and white supremacy. And so I think if you're listening to me talk and you're just like, we're not white supremacists, that's ridiculous. We could prove that we're not. You can't prove it, is the point. It's not like, you know, I'm not saying that you don't have the arguments to prove it. I'm saying that you're in no position to prove it, because like they can just change your voice and they can change what you're saying. And so even like today with all the like extremist content warnings and stuff like that, like that's where like things are going. Like I think it was very interesting timing, you know, that we're here kind of talking about this, and all of a sudden, you know, Facebook is unleashing, do you know, like my mom got one, do you know someone who's dangerously close to becoming an extremist? And I'm just like, oh fuck, I gotta get my shit in order.
I need to see if I get that when I open it.
Right. And well, you'll get one that you've been exposed to.
Yep, I've got it.
Yeah. Or is it someone that
Are you
know?
concerned that someone you know is becoming an extremist?
Oh, damn. Yeah, that's a better one to get than the one I got. Anyway, and so then like, and so like this is all what's happening, and this is like the fuel for this whole, you know, agenda that's moving forward. And like you can see it moving forward. You know, I mean, would you ever think like a year ago that you would get something like this on Facebook when you open it up, you know, and like things are moving very quickly, and there's going to be like casualties from this, you know. I mean, like you remember when like the CNN boys were getting involved with like the Black Lives Matter thing, and you know, they were getting a lot of negative press, and you know, like the CNN boys were made out to be this spooky, like homophobic, racist, just white guy organization. And so a bunch of people ran to myself included, you know, kind of like, you know, we're just kind of screaming, you know, this is ridiculous. Like if you know anything about the CNN boys, they take a kind of like gay take on a lot of stuff. They're very just like, we're LGBT friendly. Look at this picture of like, you know, these black and Chinese CNN boys, And the whole point is that, you know, we're not a bunch of white, we're united by ideology and none of this. And the whole thing is just like, no one hears that. No one hears that with what you're up against. It's just like, for most people who are conscious of like current events, if they know what the CNN boys, and I'm obviously using a euphemism because you can't even say the other word anymore. If you ask them what's up with that group, they're just like Nazis. That's what most people are going to say. And so just with like what's actually happening, where you actually have a bunch of like white guys who love talking about guns and how much they hate the internet, kind of rallying to something called a takeover. The media machine, the cathedral, whatever you want to call it, they can make that out to just like, you're gifting them a whole bunch of fuel if they decide to use it to further this whole agenda that they have. That is in fact moving along, as if most of the people probably have gotten this warning on Facebook. And that's sort of like the concern, is that when you hear people talk about, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? We don't do we just kind of wasted our time and we don't really get anywhere with it. No, I don't think that's the worst thing that could happen. I don't think that zero is the worst thing that can happen. I think it could in fact be a negative, and it's if you haven't thought about it. And so like, if you're like 20 and you just heard someone say taxation is theft, and you like guns, and like you run into all these people who are just like, yeah, guns are the best, and like shouldn't be infringed, and blah blah blah. I can understand all that enthusiasm. You're not going to really be thinking through this stuff, but I think there's a responsibility that falls on people who are a bit older or more seasoned to kind of at least address the topic of, okay, this is the political climate we're in. This is the agenda. It's very clear. On January 6th, they mentioned libertarians by name, the former CIA director. This is how, as we move forward in our political takeover, how we are going to mitigate, the proposition of being used as fuel for the regime to pursue this white supremacist domestic terrorist narrative that they're pushing to do horrible shit to people. And I just know of this couch I'm on right here. Spike slept on this couch like a year ago or maybe more, before I campaigned with him at like a college in Greensboro. And someone that I was campaigning alongside with Spike and myself, I'm pretty sure they're awaiting charges, of like, like weapons dealing with like Hamas or some shit. You know what I mean? And so it's just, I mean, I don't know if you've heard about on the internet, or like, I don't know if he's part of the LP. I'm not saying that you get involved in the LP, you're going to get arrested, or I'm saying that the idea that there are actual consequences to this, beyond like, making a joke of just like, oh, this is the meme of like, oh, my FBI agent, watching me, post on Facebook. It's like, that's not a fucking joke, man. And it's just like, and some of the people that are posting that, it's not out of the question that they are themselves FBI agents. People that it's real shit is the point. So it can have actual real life consequences, and it can be used politically. So that's my like plain English explanation of like what the concerns are, beyond like that's predation and beyond like biblical prophecy. Like none of that. If I just like boil it down, like that's what it is.
The point is not that this stuff can be used against you and we're concerned about someone having it used against them only. Yes, that is true. And yes, we are concerned about that. But ultimately, if something like that happens to someone, my opinion is they deserved it. They put themselves in that position and it happened to them. And there was all kinds of red flags to indicate that that's what was going to happen. Our biggest concern, at least my biggest concern, is not only are you putting yourselves in harm's way, but you're giving the very people you claim to oppose ammunition. You're creating the pretext for even greater erosions of liberty. I've tweeted today that no regime can exist without an enemy. The very pretext of a regime is that there is an enemy, and we need to organize to defeat that enemy. And then we need to preserve this regime so that that enemy doesn't return. And so that if that enemy does return, we already have an organization that can take care of it. That's the very premise of a regime. So when people say, oh, well, the people like laugh about how, oh, the U.S. can't win any wars abroad. The war of terror is done. Nobody cares about it anymore. That wasn't a good thing for domestic opponents of the regime. Because if the regime doesn't have any enemies overseas, they're going to start looking for them here. Because the regime needs enemies to exist. As an enemy of the regime, you are the lifeblood of the regime. So if you become an even louder enemy of the regime, you're invigorating the regime. You're injecting energy into the system. Energy that will be turned around and used against you. And it doesn't matter how right you are. It doesn't matter how great your arguments are.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Like that. It's not. Yes. That. Yeah.
There are people whose explicit goal is to take over the regime and then use the regime to murder every single person who opposes them. Those people exist. And those people don't play Minecraft. So if you want to provoke those people, if you want to put yourselves in their crosshairs, then by all means, get involved in political activism targeted at destroying the state in 2021. Next subject. Last subject. Here we go. Here's our interview that we've been talking about.
This is so fun.
Isn't this slick?
Yeah.
Restream is awesome.
Yeah, fans. If you're liking the new interface, why don't you give this video a like? You know what I mean?
I won't say. Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. Good job doing the stuff that we're supposed to do when we do these things. I won't name the other platform that we were using because there's nothing wrong with the other platform. The problem is with my computer. The other system that I was using to send our stream out. I was using another one and I was sending it to Restream, and now this is just within Restream, as you can see, and I don't even need that other one anymore. So that's going to save me $40 a month. Okay. So
yeah, and you're going to send that into the government earmarked to bomb Yemeni children, I believe, or have them shipped here for marriage. I didn't say how old. Didn't say how old. Children's very ambiguous. You can be under your parents' health insurance. They're 26, so calm down.
If you're under your parents' health insurance and you
should be married
near 26. Then the age of consent law is too low for you. Okay, so if you guys want to listen to a really interesting conversation, look up the Good Old Boys podcast and look at their most go to Patreon, and maybe we'll put a link to it. The link you sent me, I'll just put that in the description of the video today. Mm-hmm. And go listen to their episode on their Patreon with Mencius Moldbug with Curtis Yarvin. Very, very interesting conversation.
Really, and I'll say this: if you're one of these guys who, like me, when I first listened to Mr. Yarvin talk, I was like, man, this is a lot of bullshit. A lot of like the way he was like talking. If it's kind of off-putting to you, he speaks just like a normal dude during this interview, I would say. And I think it was because he was drinking cognac through the entire thing. But he should drink.
Was he?
He made like an allusion to it at the end. Yeah. And so I think it'd be good for Mr. Yarvin to continually drink cognac, but it's something about the interview. It really just kind of flowed very naturally, very easy to follow. Not a lot of citing of obscure writings, and his brain wasn't kind of meandering like it sometimes does, which can kind of be distracting. But it was a very 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, type of style of interview, and I think it was very palatable, even though it was 3 hours or something like that.
It was more conversational than some of his as well.
Yeah.
The hosts of that are fascinating to me.
Yeah, they're like really well-read Southern people, which even though I've lived in North Carolina,
they're not just really well-read Southern people, they're like really well-read bumpkins. Like that's how they sound when you listen to them talk.
Yeah, like,
and I think that it's an act. I think that they are Southern, but I think that they accentuate their Southernness
maybe
because to create that juxtaposition of like super well-read, high IQ, but also very, very Southern.
Yeah. Anyway, really good interview. You should go listen to it. And it's really timely. A lot of the topics are just really timely with what we had been discussing too.
They start off the conversation discussing this post here that he just wrote recently called "On Banning Ideas," talking about Chris Rufo and what he's been doing with getting critical race theory banned and all that. And so I'll just read some of the segments from this piece here because they illustrate some of the stuff they were talking about in the podcast. So this piece is called "On Banning Ideas," and he said big things are easier than small things. He said there are 3 ascending stages of awareness in a democratic or populist political strategy: issues, ideas, and institutions. Issues are for people who are contributing to a common good faith process. Populists keep thinking about issues until they realize that there is no good faith and they are no longer part of the process. If they stay Democrats, little d, their new goal is not to participate in the democratic process, but to restore it. So they start thinking about the ideas that have become the process. So you start off with the issues. So issues are like, okay, we're involved. There's this good faith thing. We're all here just because we want to solve these problems. So let's think about these issues. And after a period of time, people realize nobody else here is engaged in good faith. This whole system has gotten corrupt. It's starting to fall apart. We need to restore the system. So that's when they say that we've gotten off the democratic process. We need to get back and restore it. So they start thinking about the ideas that have become the process. So you're no longer operating on the issue level. You've gone to the idea level where there's the ideas that backstop the issues. They realize that ideas are not commercial products in a peaceful marketplace, but psychological weapons on a hostile battlefield. Exactly. They learn to see their own ideas as weapons and lose their aversion to settling intellectual conflicts by force. A weapon is a weapon. Finally, they realize that the battlefield of ideas is not level or symmetric, but has a geometry which is a function of the institutions which process and transmit ideas. This is why we keep saying you will not be successful with any of this stuff until you have institutions. And not all institutions are created equal. You have to understand where institutions come from, why they exist, and how they function. This subject that I just what's the term? I can't remember if I say this. If I type this wrong, it's gonna bring me some there we go. This guy's name is Pornell, and his he has an iron law of bureaucracy. And it's the iron law of bureaucracy states that in any bureaucratic organization, there will be 2 kinds of people: those who work to further the actual goals of the organization and those who work for the organization itself. So an example in education would be teachers who work and sacrifice to teach children versus the union representative who works to protect any teacher, including the most competent. The iron law states that in all cases, the second type of person, the person who's working for the institution, will always gain control of the institution and will always write the rules under which the organization functions. So that applies here, that the institutions are ultimately going to be taking control of the people who are motivated to preserve the institution, not the idea upon which the institution was predicated, or the idea that sparked the creation of the institution. So to continue with Moldbug here, with Yarvin, he said, in the 2020s, American conservatism, which is American populism or American democracy, is doing very well to get to the second phase. Perhaps we can both pat democracy on the back and tell it how much further it has to go. Recent Democratic attempts to ban.
Talking about that guy. Okay.
He's the perfect style of condescending.
Yeah.
Recent Democratic attempts to ban something called critical race theory, which, like it or not, is actually just the normal belief system of sophisticated people in 2021, show an interesting mix of promise and opportunity. The realization that ideas are not products in a marketplace, but weapons on a battlefield, is the seed of this unlikely initiative in setting legislation at war with education and passing a law that bans an idea, even just in elementary schools. The fundamental awareness here is that, contrary to a certain mantra, culture is downstream from power. Of course, ideas can be banned. Power loves to ban ideas, does it all the time, and almost always gets away with it. Worst of all, power is often, though not always, right. Yarvin writes, I oppose banning ideas. I only believe in banning institutions. It seems appropriate that Bannon, Steve Bannon is his name. Anyways, power will always have the fundamental right to ban error. With good institutions rather than bad ones, power will never have to use this fundamental right, whose abuse is hardly unprecedented. Yet the asymmetric chutzpah of, we can ban ideas, so you must oppose banning ideas, is too much Orwell for any normal sane person to bear. Finally, the normal people snap and kick feebly back. Emotionally, the reflex is understandable. Strategically, the central realization that a war is not an argument, and in war, never act reflexively. The fundamental problem with banning CRT is that, while culture is downstream from power, no one can dam a river by taking a dump in it. Passing state laws against critical race theory is wrong and ineffective, but not because it goes too far, only because it goes nowhere near far enough. And I'll let you guys finish reading the rest of it, because I don't want to just turn this into an episode of just a live reading. We could do some more live readings in the future. But the hold on here. Oh, I just realized that I wasn't sharing that whole time. Oh well. So in the podcast, what he talks about is he kind of runs through the actual. People like to talk about these conversations very much in the abstract. Again, this is this liberalism thing that we abstract everything away and just universalize things, and we deal with a hypothetical world rather than the actual world. So people say, "Oh, we're going to ban critical race theory. Now it won't be taught in schools anymore." Okay, great, fantastic, we've won. This is the small-brained, what's today is conservative view of the world, which is the people who still actually believe in democracy. The Democrats, the ones who are named after democracy, and the people who always appeal to democracy aren't actually talking about democracy. And we've tried to make that point here before, that when you hear people say democracy, what you need to hear is government by the elite in the interests of the people. That's what they're talking about when they use the word democracy. That's why they appeal to experts. That's why everything is all about the experts and what the experts say and following the experts and obeying the science and all that. They don't actually mean representational government. They don't actually mean government that respects the will of the people, because that's fundamentally just an impossibility. They've realized that, subconsciously or not, and they're using the term democracy to sucker in good-intentioned people who are overwhelmingly likely to be conservative or libertarian. So what he points out, he says, okay, let's run through this as the way it's actually going to work. So you've created this law. You've made a law, and you've said this is how things are going to have to be. That law doesn't make things that way. That law informs the people who will make things whatever way they're going to be. The people who have to enforce the law, the teachers, the principals, the educational staff. And as Yarvin points out, those people almost universally oppose the banning of critical race theory. So if you expect them to just say, "Oh, well, since they banned it, then I guess we're just going to not be able to teach it," it's naive. They're definitely going to keep teaching critical race theory. They're just going to do it in a different name. They're going to teach the exact same concepts. They're just going to come up with a way to do it. They're just going to work around it, because that's the way that communists actually work. They will work around whatever whatever institution you put in their way. They'll route around it. Libertarians will try to take over that institution and turn themselves into tools to be used by the institution, because when libertarians take over an institution, they try to use that institution for the ideas that the institution stands for. That's why they're so wound up about taking over the Libertarian Party. If you took the name Libertarian off the party and it was just the third largest political party in America, and you offered it to them and you said, hey, do you want to take over this political party? They would be like, no, third parties are irrelevant. They have no power. They don't influence anything. If you're going to take over a political party, it's a two-party system. There's no way it's not going to be a two-party system. But then you put libertarian on it, and all of a sudden, yes, take it over. They believe in the idea upon which the institution was created. But ultimately, the institution will be governed by the people who are acting in the interests of the institution, not the ideas that motivate the institution. So go listen to the episode. He makes a really interesting case about why the proper way to deal with this is for everybody to start teaching critical race theory, to expand the concept of critical race theory. And he has a really interesting way of doing that. It seems counterintuitive, but this is the way that I'm trying to get more people thinking this way. That's one of the reasons we started the show, was to get more people to think about things in a pragmatic way, not dealing with hypotheticals and ideals and principles and all that, but with what actually works, what actually has an impact. And the last point here, because I've got to get out of here. There's he elaborates in this interview on an idea that he's discussed in other places about the way that you would effectuate a regime change and how you have to go about that. And it's not take it over. It's not come at it with all this kind of hostility. The podcast is called The Good Old Boys. It's good, OLBOYZ, I believe. And you can hear it. I don't know. It was on their Patreon is where Steven sent it to me.
I found it off the Twitters. I found a link on the Twitters.
Yeah. So just search for it. You'll find it. This was just in the last couple of days. But the way to effectuate a proper regime change is you have to think through all the steps of how people are actually going to behave, not just like how they would behave in your ideal world. How will they actually respond to the actual incentives in front of them? And a large part of that is you have to treat them with respect, and you basically have to buy them off, the existing members of the regime, the existing enforcers of the regime. You need them to think that you're their friend. You need them to think that you're not there to treat them with hostility. You're there to, like he says, the majority of them hate their jobs anyways. So what he says is basically, if you were to go through these different steps he prescribes, and you were to take control of the institution in a way that you actually governed it and you could dictate it, then the way you would sunset the rest of these corrupt bureaucracies and everything is you would give the pension, you would cash and give in a lump sum the pension for every single state employee. And you would show up at their house with a briefcase full of 20s and give it to them. And he runs through the psychology of that, what that would do to the person who is receiving that money. And this is how to think about these issues. All the conversations people have about this, where they're talking like, we're going to, spit hot liberty fire, and we're going to, get people are going to hear the message and they're going to believe in it, and they're going to come join us to do what, who knows? Nobody's actually answered that. Right. And to completely kneecap the progress toward any sort of institution building that might already exist. This is the way. This is the way. Not necessarily exactly what he prescribes, but I think what he's trying to do is the same thing. He's trying to get people to think in this manner, to think pragmatically, to recognize that institutions rule the day, and that people who oppose the regime have no institutions. They hold no power. They hold no institutional power. And until they do, all of these moves don't affect it. In fact, as he makes the case, doing something like banning critical race theory just worsens your position. It makes it even harder to compete, and it muddies the water for the people. So you can't identify the actual source of the problem. They get to hide in they get to hide in the water as it gets muddied, and they can continue to do whatever they're going to do. And the system will continue to derange itself and drag all the rest of us with it. So anyways, I've got to get out of here. I've got a phone call to make, but don't worry. I see people in the chat are trying to find it. I'm just going to put the link into the video here on YouTube as soon as we finish.
Another great idea would be if you tweeted it out, and then
I will do that as well.
In the chat, hopefully you follow Matt at RealKingPilled on Twitter.
And then follow Steven follow Steven on Twitter, Libertarian Steve.
Need to follow me on Twitter. It's
no. They need to follow Libertarian Steve on Twitter.
Oh, right. Yes.
See your name. Your name is Libertarian Steve.
Right. Right.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. This is another good show. I like this format. We're going to definitely use this format here that we use today. We're going to use that going forward. So, yeah, remember, like, share, subscribe. Go listen to the panel discussion that I had with the group of guys on Counterflow yesterday with Buck Johnson. And go listen to the episode that Pete Quinones is recording today with Dave Smith. He has promised to tear apart Cyprian's and my arguments from the Liberty Lockdown podcast. Go listen to that, and we'll see what happens next.